Hello, Eswatini. Hello, world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are. Well, we're back once again on the Connect with the courtesy of hip hop.
And I'm Shirley B. That's now my stage name. How do we follow in after that? Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome again. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning here in the beautiful kingdom of Eswatini. As you know, we are here to talk about what's been happening in our local news, giving you an opportunity to share what's been happening in yours. And of course, our theme of the day is just to let you know and share with you a little bit more about Eswatini's response to COVID. And as you know, we're often never alone in the room, right?
Never.
We are always blessed to have beautiful people that join us. And today we'd like to welcome Fulumnisi and Sihle Mzileni. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
So we'll be talking to you a little bit later really about what it is when we say Eswatini's response to COVID. But I hope you won't mind joining us just as we work through some of the topics or themes of the day that we've been following in our local media, or online.
Yeah, absolutely. But Shirley, maybe before we get into that, because this has been like a rising concern, like even before in the previous episodes, is the fact that we are sitting here, but we're not masked. So in between us, you might not be able to see it. We've got these glass barriers. You know, these are like Perspex glass barriers. So they do the same function as the mask, just in terms of keeping what's this side, and what's that side. But obviously, because we are on a show, we need to be audible, and we still need to be able to get to you. So rest assured, we are following all the precautions. The place has been disinfected. We have sanitized. We have done just about everything that we need to do to take precaution.
But yeah, thank you very much. And I think it's just to say to everybody out there, it's important that we keep each other accountable. So thank you for just reminding us, hey guys, are you keeping to the guidelines? I think what's important is we want to lead by example, right? And not just simply say, but not do. So thank you for reminding us. And I think we'll be talking about where you can get these screens, because I think this is sort of the future, right? Yeah, a lot of talk shows have been doing this. I don't know if you've been down to the local supermarkets. They now have screens at the tills. The cashiers are being protected. So I think a lot of people will be interested in putting this in our spaces. Okay, so as you know, we always want to hear from you. And today in the room, we'd like to say hello, Sanbonani. We've got Martin saying coffee anyone. Martin, we're hooked up. Thank you very much. There we go. Thank you. We've got Calvin, Marisa. We've got Bridget, Melody. Okay, so thank you. Welcome into the room with us. Please remember that we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, and we are live to Instagram. So you can follow us on any of those platforms, whichever you prefer, and just keep the conversation going. Let us know what you're thinking, and obviously you'll have an opportunity to ask these gentlemen any questions as we work through this idea of what exactly is happening in Eswatini when we speak COVID response. Okay.
Absolutely. We're just like sorting out a little bit of technicalities, because technical things will always be technical. All right. This is a beautiful morning out here in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Welcome to everybody that is joining us from wherever you are in the world. We do invite questions, comments, queries around the topic that we're discussing today. We're specifically zoning into Eswatini's response to COVID-19, but wherever you are in the world, please share with us what are you doing personally, or maybe your community, or maybe your government that is working or that is effective. That takes us to our quote of the day, and our quote of the day simply says, "The hands that make mistakes belong to those who work."
Okay, hold on. We need to hear that again. We just need to let it sink in a little bit.
The hands that make mistakes belong to those who work.
Okay.
And I know there's been a whole lot of criticism, especially around, maybe the response to COVID-19 from an individual space, or maybe even from companies, or maybe even from governments and all of that. But the truth of the matter is, the mistakes are being made because something is being done.
Yeah.
Just thinking, they say do nothing, say nothing, you'll never be criticized.
Yeah.
So it's when you are doing something, you are saying something, you are making a difference, that people will criticize you, but you know you are making a contribution to humanity. I like that quote.
Absolutely.
That's an awesome quote. And I think, Phil, to your point, I think what we need to understand also is that being uncomfortable is necessary if we want to make a difference. If we don't go out there and maybe shake the status quo, you know, no one will talk about what happened. That story will never be told. So, and I think sometimes, you know, it's about building resilience and being strong enough to say that there's something we're trying to achieve. So the discomfort is all worth it at the end. But yeah, you need to be quite strong to face up to that, hey? Lovely quote, thank you. You're so good with your quotes.
Hey, you know. And it is actually an African proverb.
Okay.
Because right here on the Connect, we're all about Africa Rise. We're promoting all things that are African. You'll see in our background, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. We've got some beautiful art behind us. We've got some breakfast goodies that have been provided by our friends in the food industry, and we'll, you know, double click on that a little bit in a while. But for now, in the news this week, there's apparently arrests that are going on in South Africa, and we don't know if in Swaziland this is happening yet, but people are being arrested for not wearing masks in public.
So it came out on a WhatsApp group, gentlemen, I don't know if you're aware. Apparently if you don't wear masks, it's either 6 months in prison or up to 20,000 fine. That was what was circulating. And then people were asking, is this in Eswatini? So I'm not sure if you've heard anything about it. Can we confirm that it is happening locally, or this is something that may be happening across our borders?
Maybe if I can come in there, we might not be aware of the sentences that are being passed in South Africa, but we do advocate for the sentences to have that deterrent effect, because not wearing a mask, basically it is defiance in itself, and you risk spreading the COVID virus to others. So basically we are thankful to the law enforcing agencies for doing a good job, particularly in Eswatini.
Yes, thank you.
But I must say that, well, of course, I saw that in South Africa. I don't think in Swaziland there is anyone that has been charged yet. But I'm seeing it's quite interesting. To be honest, it's quite appreciative to see a lot of Swazis walking, and I was driving in Babane, you know, even along the roads in rural areas, people wearing a mask. Yes. So I think Swazis are responding, Maswati are responding very well. Let's not get to a point where we have to put enforcement. Let's just comply, because this is for our benefit, it's for our good. We are taking responsibility of each other, taking responsibility of others as well. I think
absolutely.
And I think we are doing well in terms of risk communication, community engagement, and social mobilization. Because for people to respond positively, it means that the program that we have deployed on the ground is more effective in terms of influencing or inclining people towards behavioral change.
No, absolutely. Yes, no, I have to agree with you, gentlemen. There was a time when we were sort of, you know, we'd heard about COVID, it had come out, we had seen the response coming out of our neighbors, but we were not responding quickly enough. And I remember being, you know, in Matapa and seeing people and thinking, why aren't we wearing masks? But gradually it just built up to a time now where everybody, you're right, at the combi stops, in town are wearing masks. And I think we just need to maybe even as we pass people in the streets, just commend our fellow men and women for actually responding and having masks. And maybe for those who aren't, we can just wag a little finger. Or go to the nearest shop and actually buy one and gift them. But you're absolutely right. You know, Joy Ndwandwe was with us last week. You'll remember if you joined us. And she was saying, each one of us has a role to play. Are you protecting yourself? And if we all even just focus on ourselves, the ripple effect happens. So I think that's a call out. But yeah. Yeah,
Shirley, just a short one. But can we just wear it properly? You know, it doesn't serve its purpose. If you're wearing a mask on your neck, it must cover your nose and your mouth.
Yes.
So, I mean, there are those, let's call them they still need some encouragement.
Yeah, okay,
You just
I like
need
that.
to wear it properly
Yes.
so that it's effective.
Absolutely.
And
I
wash
like
it
that.
more often.
And wash it more
Yeah,
often,
no,
yes. So guidelines around keeping it sanitized, absolutely, especially if it's a cloth one. If it's the ones we throw away, I often use those, then
Yeah,
every day put a
dispose it
new one.
properly.
Yes, the disposable ones. Great.
All
What
right.
else is in the news, Courtesy?
But before we get there, welcome into the room, Buhle, Richard, Magnus, Cara, and William, I believe from Manzini, from Bremer. Yeah. Melody is from Bremer. William didn't say where he's from, William Kelly. But we do encourage that if you join us into the room, please let us know where you're coming from so that we just know how far and wide we're reaching this morning. Also in the news, this week started with a story around the extension of the lockdown.
So, you know, there's some confusion around that.
Yeah.
Many of us are thinking that the lockdown is extended by a month.
That's true.
Gentlemen, what are you understanding by this news?
Yeah, Shirley, what has actually happened is that government preferred an extension on the declaration of the national emergency.
Okay.
Whilst the partial lockdown was one of the core measures or non-pharmaceutical interventions that were enforced by government so that we can regulate and restrict movements as well as impose certain restrictions or prohibitions. So basically, the partial lockdown is one of the measures, such as this social distancing that now we are observing. And partial lockdown actually was meant to buy some enough time for government to upgrade the healthcare system so that in an event we are having a surge of cases, we can be in a position to manage them. So basically the extension, it's with regard to the state of emergency. We can go even a little further to explain to us, disaster risk management practitioners, there is a difference between a disaster and an emergency.
Okay.
Yes, an emergency, we are dealing with a particular situation that has emerged. Actually, we are mitigating the risk. But when it comes to a disaster, you mitigate the impacts. It's something that has already now overwhelmed that particular capacity of a government, and then that government will require some external support. So basically, whenever we frame a situation as a disaster, we establish the capacity to cope of all social as well as economic systems of that country.
Right.
Yes.
Wow, that's very interesting. Hey, we learn something every day. So if you're logging on, I think that was
Yeah.
very interesting just to understand the difference
Yeah.
between emergency and disaster.
Yes.
Okay, from the impact space and what it is we're actually mitigating. And Sihle will be with us obviously through this session to tell us a little bit more about what that looks and feels like on the ground, Sihle.
Yes.
And also obviously to answer your questions. So please do send them in and we'll make sure to go through them, and whatever we don't answer on this platform, we will make sure to do so even once the episode is finished airing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What else is in news?
Speaking of we do have already a comment by William Tiger Kelly who says more effort is needed to sensitize people emakaya. Heard someone the other day saying Sheshisa ubuye utongbolega. This is with reference to the mosques. So I think we just need to overemphasize the fact that your mask is your mask alone. It's not to be shared, it's not to be borrowed under any circumstances. You would rather ask somebody else to run the errands for you rather than you wait for them to come back so that they can borrow you the mask. That one is a definite no-no. But maybe what sort of like measures have been put in place in terms of just like actually the training around the masks? I mean, we will almost always compare the COVID crisis to the HIV crisis. Till this day, they're still training on how to use a condom. So many years later, and the mask almost plays the same role. So what sort of like measures have been put into place, if you guys maybe are aware of anything of that nature?
Okay, no, thank you very much. But may I recognize Nana has joined us.
Okay.
Actually, she's the Eswatini gem. She used to be the deputy director of the former Department of Disaster Management.
Okay, welcome,
And
Nana.
now she works for the SADC Disaster Risk Reduction Unit.
Okay.
Yes, as a liaison officer, and she's Swazi.
Okay.
You know.
Welcome,
Welcome, Nana.
Yeah, that's true. We are proud to have her on board. Okay, maybe just to highlight some few things with regards to the capacity building program that is being led by the Ministry of Health, because COVID has a health face.
All right.
Since
All right.
it's a pandemic and we classify it as epidemiological hazard to us, because it's not a disaster if it does not interact with a vulnerable element, but we can explain that maybe in another session. But for now, we just want to highlight that the Ministry of Health actually has moved with digital speed and established a risk communication and advocacy committee that is building the capacity of communities to ensure that they adhere to the regulations, as well as to ensure that they get that necessary information to influence behavioral change, as well as to ensure that people, you know, they observe every health care, you know, regulations. So basically, there's a lot that is being done, and that intervention has been cascaded from regional to Tinkundla chiefdom, as well as Umango level, community level, that is just below the chiefdom. There is actually there's a huge operation that is taking place. Yes, at the regional level.
Wow.
It would be nice to hear a little bit from the ground what's going on, so I hope we can connect with someone who can just share their experiences. But I think that's absolutely great how, we're looking down. We know it's always difficult to change habits and change behavior. It's not an easy thing. You know, we talk about this all the time. It is not an easy thing. Repeat is one of the keys. And also, like you said, for understanding how it benefits us. Always putting that on the fore. Okay, great. What else is happening?
All right, so now we're going to look into the price of the lockdown. So obviously, COVID-19 happens, which makes it necessary for there to be a lockdown. Now the lockdown is ongoing. What are sort of like the effects or the price of the lockdown? And I was sharing with Shelly the other day. So in the area where I live, yesterday morning, we woke up to one of the neighbors having their house broken into. Now the very interesting thing or peculiar thing about that break-in is that the people that broke in only cleaned out the refrigerator and the food cupboards or the food shelves. No valuables were taken. And then Shelley actually said, valuables were taken because in the COVID-19 space, food
is the most valuable commodity. Hey?
So that was quite an interesting observation to see that we are pretty much in that space. And obviously maybe it's one of the effects of COVID-19 making necessary a lockdown, and then now we're paying the price of that lockdown.
I think, and that's the flip side. We understand that the lockdown is a necessary response, but in that space, we also know that people's livelihoods are being impacted. Because there is no movement, you know, people are, I know there's a lot of talk around, well, we'll either die from COVID or from starvation, and those are kind of the choices that some people are left with on the ground. And these are the realities of what a lockdown can do, and we've seen it definitely in our space. So I think, just speaking to your point, it's also seeing how the value of goods has changed. What was considered valuable before is no longer today. And yet other things that we may have taken for granted, right? So the refrigerator, the food cupboards is really where, so food security is a big one, and I'm hoping we'll speak to that. But ladies and gents, if you're just joining us, we are here in the room to talk about Eswatini's response to COVID. So welcome, Zipo, thank you for joining us. We have two beautiful faces in the room with us, and perhaps just to get them know them a little bit more. Of course, they are very well-known faces, but just to give them a little bit of a story of what is behind your faces, gentlemen, if you'd allow us, please, to introduce you to our followers this morning. So let me start with you, Sihle. Sihle, I met you when obviously you and your company were coming through our processes here at the Pacific Institute. And we had a very intense and interesting time, may I say.
Very fruitful time.
A very fruitful time. So if you don't know, Sihle Mzileni holds a bachelor's degree in regional and urban planning with UNESWA, a postgraduate diploma in business administration from the Namibia Business School. He's currently finishing studying for an MBA in management strategy through the University of Namibia, and has a professional certificate in disaster risk reduction from the Centre of Parliamentary Studies in London, UK. Sihle has also worked as a regional manager, operations manager, and now strategy and sustainability director with NDMA, which stands for National Disaster Management. Yes, agency. Thank you. So NDMA, ladies and gents, if you are hearing it for the first time, you now know what we speak about. So thank you very much for joining us again and for being on the panel. Okay, but obviously we have another very handsome gentleman on the end.
Yeah, on the far end of our panel, we do have Phil Mnisi, aka Dr. Phil, aka Uncle Phil, as I like to refer to him.
All of the above.
Yeah, he's an experienced banker, businessman, strategist, and conference speaker. The current CEO of Eswatini Sugar Association. Previous positions include CEO of Standard Bank Swaziland, Assistant Governor of the Central Bank of Swaziland, and the CEO of Institute of Bankers in South Africa. Dr. Phil, or Uncle Phil, holds a PhD in Leadership and Management, Masters in Business Leadership and BCom Accounting, serves as a board chairman of several companies both in South Africa and Eswatini, and he is a chartered marketer. Yo, these CVs go on for days. So just in case you were wondering at home, and I often insist, if somebody is going to speak to you about a particular area or field, you have the right to ask them, what gives you the right to talk to me about this particular thing? And I believe these gentlemen are definitely qualified to speak to us about Eswatini's response to COVID-19. So welcome, gentlemen, and thank you so much for taking your time out of your super hectic, busy schedule to be with us this morning. And we appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
So maybe if we could start with you, Sihle. NDMA, many of us obviously have heard it, are familiar, but could you just let us know, and for the purposes of our followers, what essentially are you doing in Eswatini?
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. I just want to mention that we used to be a government department, and previously to that, there was a certain committee that was known as the National Disaster Task Force, which was more ad hoc. So in terms of institutionalization, government then decided to establish the Department of Disaster Management. But it sufficed that really the mandate of the department required some rapid, response mechanism. So that could not be achieved through the government machinery. So then government decided then to transit it into a parastate or quasi-state entity. So that is what we are now. We are a principal agency responsible for coordinating the overall disaster risk management function in Eswatini.
Okay.
Yes, we are coordinating all forms of responses as they cascade from primary level to secondary level as well as tertiary level. Okay. And we are responsible for deploying a risk mitigation strategy for the country, because before a situation degenerates into a disaster, there are inherent risks as well as residual risks that can then degenerate into a disaster. So basically 98% of our time we spend on delivering that program, then 2% is when we are now responding. Now COVID has come into the country, then now we have structured some systems and mechanisms to deal with COVID. Working with the government agencies, because we do not reinvent government.
Yes.
Actually, we work with the government entities, we work with the civil society organizations, the UN system, even the private sector, the business community. They've really come on board. We've established what we call a sector-wide approach, where each sector is being led by the relevant government ministry that is responsible for that development theme. Like in agriculture and food security, is the Minister of Agriculture responsible for that development theme within government. Then it's co-led by a UN agency that is responsible for agriculture, which is FAO. Then all other entities now responsible or having a component of driving the development agenda in the agricultural space, they then form part of the membership. So what we do, we coordinate that things are being done at sector level, not really that we do things on behalf of the sector. So that's the clarification that maybe we can put to the forefront.
Right, so
Yes.
very important work that you're doing. And I think what's very important is obviously to understand that something like COVID requires a multi-pronged approach and a multi-sectorial
Yes.
approach.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the thinking, you know, not always looking that government must be the entity to solve the problem, but that we all need to lean in our different sectors to help out. Phil, coming over to you, that's very important in the work you're doing. So obviously NDMA has been around for a long time, but you're heading up a kind of a resource mobilization initiative that is quite new and very specific to COVID. Would you like to tell us what you're doing?
Well, thank you very much, Shirley and TK. First of all, we would like to express gratitude, appreciation for the confidence expressed by, let's say, government, especially His Majesty, for entrusting this committee which I'm chairing. It constitutes of lots of senior executives from the private sector, and of course members of NDMA, UN, have been quickly put together. How this committee came about, and that's the crucial point. It was working with government, assisting for the preparation and organizing one of the, I want to call it an epitome of where the country celebrates the birthday of His Majesty. So this committee was private sector led, working, mobilizing resources. But in the wisdom of His Majesty, and I was chairing it, it's a committee of about 13 CEOs working with government, as I've said, and the Minister of Home Affairs. In the wisdom of His Majesty, when this pandemic came and this, call it emergency, arose in the country, he commanded that all the resources that were being mobilized for the birthday to celebrate our culture, our heritage, let them all be directed to in response to COVID. And he commanded that we work and support and assist NDMA. And that's basically where we drew our mandate. And it has just been an amazing journey. We started working on this towards mid-March. And the response has been phenomenal. We have got people coming, individuals, churches, chiefs, international organizations. It's just companies, small, medium, large, all saying we are ready. And after hearing this call from His Majesty and from government, and we've been able to raise quite a significant amount of money and support, which we collaborate and work with the NDMA. So that's how the National Resource Mobilization Committee came about. It is not at this point in time an institutionalized committee, because all the functions of running disaster and an emergency are embedded in the NDMA. So, but I think government in wisdom and His Majesty in wisdom, it says, let's work together, because this was a crisis. So we had to respond very, very quickly. So that's the committee that I'm leading. It's very diverse, and it's quite strong leaders who are actually have got their own stature and caliber, and they have been able to use their network to mobilize the resources that we have done so far. Close to 104 million Malangan or worth of contribution has been made. And this is in addition to what also government put aside in response to this COVID. So other than just what government put aside, we have been able to mobilize this, and we are still calling for more.
That's incredible. Thank you.
No, that is amazing. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for breaking that down, because oftentimes we're just aware of the existence of certain organizations or certain teams and bodies, but we just don't have maybe like the in-depth understanding of what it is that you guys do exactly. And just maybe to go back to something that you said, Sihle, is the fact that you guys are there to make sure that something is being done, but not to do. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people are having. They're just sitting back waiting for government to do something, or NDMA or somebody to do something. And yet in this particular case, and we spoke about this last week, is the fact that we need all hands on deck right now. Not just the government, not just the leaders or leadership, but we actually need each and every person to be a leader in their area of influence, starting with yourself. And we are speaking about wearing of masks, being responsible about, one, making sure you're wearing masks, and it's not just about you, but it's also about the people around you. And then now influencing your family, your community, and your country, and that is how we're gonna win this battle. Because then otherwise, if we're just looking to one person or one group of people, we're not gonna go very far. Yeah. But maybe so we understand that you gentlemen are sort of like sitting in the hot seat right now. But from a personal space, how are you guys coping with COVID-19? Just now with you as Phil and with you as Sishe. How are you guys dealing with COVID-19 before you are the director and the chairperson of the various organizations?
I'll let Sishe go first.
Thank you very much, KRTC, for raising that very important question.
Yeah.
Because we come from families, we come from communities. Actually, before we work for these agencies that government has entrusted the responsibilities with. So basically, personally, to me, this has been the very rapid onset. We call it a rapid onset, while drought, we call it just a slow onset.
Okay.
So rapid onsets, they are always tiring because you need to ensure that you put together some ad hoc interventions before you can systematically deal with a particular a pandemic or emergency or a disaster.
Sure.
So basically doing things and trying to achieve outputs and outcomes within a short space of time, it exerts too much pressure on you as a person. But because we are practitioners in this field, we've been trained, we do understand that if it is not us who are putting the effort, who can do that for our country. So basically that is why we apply ourselves even beyond the reasonable ability to ensure that all systems, they are running in good accord so that we can contain the spread of the COVID pandemic.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say, one could easily say this is a government responsibility. Why bother if you are in the private sector? And I am from private sector. I think the way I have taken it is that this is the time to be counted. This is the time to stand up and respond and support the nation. This is the time that we must all play our part in our small way. An ocean is not made out of a flood. It's made out of a single drop. So as you make that drop, everybody makes that drop. Eventually an ocean is made or a flood is made. So I have taken a view that I am currently the CEO of a Eswatini sugar industry. I have got a lot of responsibilities. But over and above this, I need to respond when my country calls. I need to respond, support government. We are working now on the economic recovery. We are working in talking to people, encouraging people. So whilst one is a professional in his own right, he has to make a contribution to the nation. So I think that's the stand that I have taken. And at the same time, I have a family. I still have to encourage my family. I have got children that are locked down. My son is sitting at home. My daughter cannot go to work. She's working online. You have to provide that infrastructure, that support at home. You have got some little businesses that you are doing who are standstill, people that you've employed. So to be honest, this is something difficult. We now need to multitask, multi-skill, multi-think, all multiples that we have to do. So, but I think in essence, to answer your question, it's when you say it's time to make a difference. And I also want to thank you, TPI, because putting a show like this, you are also responding to our times and you are making a difference. In one or the other, through this program, you are encouraging somebody. That is not the end of the world. You are provising, you are improvising. That's the era we are living in. We can't fold our arms and say things will happen on their own. We must cause.
That's true.
That's very powerful.
Dr. Phil has triggered something. I think I need to make an intervention.
He often does that.
Actually, the second part of him being a pastor now, actually, I've been sensing that he's just motivating us, encouraging us. So that is why quite needful at this stage.
Absolutely.
Basically, at National Disaster Management Agency, we've been trying to come up with a strategy of integrating business into DRR. So this partnership with the National Resource Mobilization Committee actually has given us an opportunity to ensure that we facilitate the engagement even prior to the evolution of the strategy.
Okay.
So basically that is one of the benefits that have been yielded by this partnership that I've recognized, because we really need business, because when you apply the Nexus approach, normally it is business that contributes to the carbon footprint.
Okay.
Yet at the same time, it is business that can create the difference, you know, to ensure that the carbon footprint is lowered, because we are in the era where the climate change phenomenon is now inducing a lot of disasters. So basically we need a business to go with them at every step, not particularly just to contribute towards our respective endeavors of emergency response and others, but to ensure that they pre-position systems now as businesses to reduce, you know, their contribution towards, you know, the incidences of disasters.
Right. I think that's very important,
Wow.
this
Yeah,
integration
it's a
of
very good
business.
Yeah.
Both voices, government and business, have such a potential to impact people's lives
Yes.
at a family unit, at individual unit.
Yeah.
And that's a very important part of this response. So thank you for that. I'd like to bring us to the screen. There we have some questions and comments that maybe we can flight.
Okay, Nana Zamini Makakula says, the price of lockdown is crucial to consider in the form of economic losses due to lockdown, but also the possible future economic contributions of people lost from lockdown or sick days from lockdown.
That's true.
Yeah.
She's a dinosaur of DRR.
I like that. Dinosaur of DRR, Nana. I don't know how you feel about that. Yeah, no, but absolutely. I think we have spoken about that. There's definitely a lot of things. When we say lockdown, there's a lot of little things that we need to consider and that are having a huge impact and that we need to respond to. And I think that's obviously where you come in. Julie says, as I look through the various social media platforms, especially WhatsApp, there is so much negative talk around COVID-19. So many comments around what everyone is doing wrong, what should be done. It is understandable that the impact of COVID is massive and leaves one feeling quite irritable and annoyed. I would like to send a call out for showing appreciation for everyone in government and private sector and the nation at large who are trying to make decisions for the nation. Keeping in mind that the world at large is still trying to figure this thing out. It is and will be a process. We can only do our best right now with the information we have for now. Let's work together. Thank you, Julie. That's absolutely beautiful. You're right. And you know, these are situations we haven't seen before. So we're learning on the job, and we need a little bit of grace because we're not going to get it right all the time. But it's very cool. Obviously, the leadership, I think, has a common voice, and business come together to say, can we have a common voice as to how we're going to approach this? You mentioned that there's a lot of initiatives you're doing on the ground. Would you like to share with us, perhaps, Phil, what are these partnerships and these strategic partnerships you're working with NDMA to respond on the ground in very practical means? You said there's 100 million that's been raised. What is that money being used for?
I just want to just let you on what Julie there said. I mean, that's very profound. These are uncharted terrains. Nobody has walked the path of COVID. But we really want to compliment and thank our government, led by His Excellency, the Right Honorable Prime Minister. You can see that there is collective thinking, there is consultation. You know, the Honorable DPM is leading by example. He's in communities, he's distributing food himself. So this collective thinking that is happening within our government, private sector, NGOs, parastatals, it's been just phenomenal. So I really commend that. And we've also heard, I mean, even the president of South Africa the other day in his State of the Nation, he was even asking for forgiveness where they've made mistakes. I mean, for a leader to ask, forgive me, it shows that, you know, we have to lead during these times with a heart, not just a mind only. Back to what we are doing, and first of all, let me just once again appreciate those individuals, the churches that have made a donation. Some have pledged cash and some have honored their pledges, and they've already flown into the bank account of the response, COVID response, which is at Standard Bank. And so what we are doing so that the money, the intention is not to keep the money sitting in the bank. So as long as the cash pledges are redeemed, we wait upon NDMA to say there is a need there. Then we disperse the funds, we buy those goods and services that are required, because there is a priority list that NDMA has. So we are not shooting in the dark. They've given us and said, you know, the PPEs are important, beds, sanitizers, there were number, and the priorities change. As people are donating, the focus shift in a particular direction. So we have seen those funds flowing in, and I just want to thank each and every Swati on all corners of this country who have come. And by the way, we are meeting again tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So anybody who would like to make the contribution, please do come. And also what has happened, so other than just the cash, which is about 13.6 million cash that has been pledged and is being redeemed right now, we have got close to 90 million. This 90 million came through pledges by the UN. I think about 45 million of that came from the UN. That's not cash, but that's when they will go out and support, work with NDMA, do capacity building and do stuff, but all related to COVID. We had the Taiwanese government embassy donating about 10 million, and we have already seen that contribution. It has come, doctors are already here, and we have got businesses Swatini who have mobilized resources as well through a private sector, and they've come and donated quite a substantial amount and buying goods and services. And there's another additional donation, which I'm sure Sihle will talk about, where one of our entrepreneurs in the country is going to be donating in monetary term food support to communities worth close to 40 million or so. And that is outside the 90 million that I'm talking about. We have got organizations like FNB Foundation who have contributed directly. We have got, I think it's Lidwala. They've said we are going to contribute 270,000 to revamp Ward 18 at the clinic. And this is also part of helping COVID, creating the capacity. So there are a lot of people within that 89 million, 90 million, which you can call it in kind, but it is actually not in kind, because it is buying goods and services to help create capacity and create readiness so that we fight this scourge. And I really believe that the country is well poised to fight it. And the needs are still enormous. The social needs, food, capacity, I mean, we can't say we are done. So that's how we've been. So we are working closely with NDA. They get the list from the Minister of Health, and then we are now directing our donors to say, try and respond in line with the priority list that NDMA has articulated.
Wow. That's incredible. What I love, and just to springboard off what you're saying, Phil, I think it's really important. You know, often we've been said we always wait to receive funds from external, and yet we have a network and a resource space internally in this country. And just to re-echo what you said is just to commend, I think, businesses locally, obviously NDMA working in partnership with business, just to mobilize those resources and to say, what can we do internally to respond to this COVID? And I think that really needs to be commendable. And it's teaching us also and showing us how resilient we are. And what it is we can do when we actually look internal and we say, okay, let's do something instead of waiting for somebody else to give, to show, but we working from the inside out. And I think that's really very powerful, and I think it's going to show us things we probably didn't know about ourselves as a nation once we come through. But just to also get into some more detail around, so you said there's a list, there's a priority list. What I love, you said, Phil, is that this priority list changes depending on how the needs evolve. And I think that's very important. We always talk about being flexible and agile in the space and needing to respond where the need is created. So that's so important. We had this hashtag fluidity. Hey? It's this idea to flow with the needs as they come about. But just in some detail, Sihle, please share with us a little bit, what are some of the activities that are happening on the ground that have now come up as being really key at this point in time? What are the primary response, sort of, if you call, activities or projects that you are involved in now?
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. But may I write on the narrative that has been built by Dr. Phil? Really, in our inception meeting, I think we're at MTN Golf Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Phil mentioned that really the mandate of the National Resource Mobilization Committee is not a mandate of collecting offerings, but it's for mobilizing people to do something. Like business is doing something here, then we need to register and convert it into cash.
Right.
Then there are those monies that are going to come in cash to the coffers of the National Resource Mobilization Committee, and that is highly commendable. More especially to philanthropic agencies, like he has highlighted that there is a benefactor that has provided an equivalent of 45 million in Malangen for us to disperse to support those who are in immediate need of food, as they have been affected by the cascading impacts of the pandemic. So basically, that is one intervention that I can highlight, because in our analysis, COVID-19 has induced some primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts. The primary impact being the impact in the healthcare system of the country, because it's a pandemic I've highlighted. Then when government enforced certain core measures that include the partial lockdown, businesses had to close and people, they had to lose livelihoods. And even the businesses themselves, they were affected, because our focus shouldn't be centered around the people only, but even the business, because they are the mainstay of the economy. So basically, that support is going to be directed there, and there are certain interventions that government has put into place to assist those businesses that may fail to recover due to the pandemic. So basically, that is being administered by the relevant ministries. Like I've said when I highlighted that we operate within the sector-wide approach. But a larger need is in the healthcare system. COVID-19 affected the social as well as the economic systems. Social systems is the healthcare, it's education, and others. Then the economic space, we understand that it's business. So basically we say those impacts, they then cascaded due to the enforcement of the partial lockdown from the healthcare system. That is no longer now the only focus, but even the other, sectors have already been affected. And one of the interventions of reducing the spread of COVID-19 is to promote hand washing hygiene. They call it hygiene promotion, as well as to promote what they call the coffee